Hello, my friends. How are you? Welcome to 30 Albums for 30 Years. I am your host, Jay Sweet, and today I have the great pleasure of sharing with you my interview with legendary saxophonist and composer Joshua Redman. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Josh Redman, Redman gained widespread recognition in the 1990s, receiving critical acclaim. And he's collaborated with numerous jazz luminaries, showcasing his versatility and his innovative style. Redman, quite simply, is one of modern jazz's most influential and creative figures. So we lock into what I think was a very good conversation. In it, we talk about his new record, Where Are We?, his first for Blue Note, and also his upcoming performance at the Count Basie Center for the Arts, the Vogel Theater, on February 9th. That's in Red Bank, New Jersey. If you live in the area, be sure to check that out. And we also talk about his upbringing. Redman's father was a famed jazz musician as well, Dewey Redman, and a whole bunch of other things. So without further ado, here it is, my conversation with Josh Redman. Please enjoy. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Good, good. I'm Jay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jay. I'm Josh.
I know. Thanks for taking the time, man. If we could, I'd like to start with talking about the album, which I think is fantastic. I want to commend you on a great record, man.
Wow, thank you so much.
I think it's your first record featuring a vocalist, if I'm correct.
Absolutely, yes. It's the first record that of my own or a collaborative record that has had a vocalist on it, I guess. I've played with vocalists over the years, not a lot. Not even sure if I ever did like a full set's worth of music, a full gig with a vocalist, probably when I first moved to New York. But yeah, this is definitely kind of virgin territory for me. Yeah, and especially in terms of like one of my own projects, I'm used to being the vocalist. I'm used to being the singer. I mean, I can't sing. No one ever, no one ever wants to hear me sing. Trust me. But I try to sing through the horn, and as an instrumental jazz musician, and as a saxophone player and as a band leader, I'm often kind of, up until now, I've been the prime melodic voice generally in the music. And so I guess I finally had the I don't know what it is, the courage to to relinquish that role, or yeah, or just the wisdom to relinquish the role.
I mean, so how did it come about, and how did you hook up with Gabrielle? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an odd story. I mean, I guess all odd stories are sorry, it's kind of an odd story, and I guess all stories are odd in a certain way. But I guess the circumstances under which this project kind of started to develop and then came to fruition were unique. I mean, unique for all of us in the sense that this this project kind of started during the pandemic. It began at a time where I was basically doing nothing musically, or at least no actual making of music with other human beings for other human beings, in one place at one time, which for me is what music is all about, right? I mean, I guess it was probably, well, I guess it was in the fall of 2021 that I kind of first started thinking about doing this. And I had in the back of my mind for a long time the idea, oh, it would be nice someday to do a record with a vocalist. But I think I kept it in the back of my mind. I banished it to the back of my mind for quite some time. And maybe there was just something about like having so much time to so much time to kind of like think about music and think about all the things that I wish I were doing or could be doing, but wasn't, during the pandemic, that maybe some stuff started to bubble up to the top a little bit. And so I guess this idea did really, I'm making a longer story of it than it needs to be. Really what happened was I got a text from my manager, Anne-Marie Wilkins. She was in New Orleans for some sort of social function, or it might have been a fundraiser. I'm not sure exactly what it was. She does a lot of work down there. But she was in New Orleans at some kind of event, and it wasn't primarily a music event. And she texted me out of the blue, and she was like, I'm sitting here, and there's this uh, vocalist performing, and she's absolutely riveting, and you've got to check her out. And so I was like, okay, I don't generally get calls or texts from my manager about music. She handles the business, and I handle the music. But I was, I was like, okay, this sounds pretty serious, and I'm at home, and that's all I'm basically doing is checking music out. So I started to kind of check out Gabrielle's music, and yeah, there's just something very uniquely uh, compelling and captivating about her sound and her style and her expression. And I was kind of drawn into it. And then we started talking and decided we were going to do an album. So that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. I mean, she is absolutely phenomenal. And then in terms of like I mean, there's a lot of first almost like I think first record for Blue Note, right?
Definitely first record for Blue Note. And in fact, this project, we made this record. Well, I was kind of, it's the only record I've ever made that was kind of like, it was made independently of any label, in the sense that it wasn't like I was kind of moving out of my relationship with Nonesuch, and wasn't clear where I was going to be next. But the timing was right to make this record. So we made it. And then uh Blue Note, you started talking to Blue Note and Don Was, and they were really excited and interested in the record. So yeah, it's on Blue Note, and I'm on Blue Note, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. And then like in terms of the concept of another thing at play is like all the songs are about places, right?
Places in the United States. That's
Right.
kind of the conceit, the little not particularly inspired concept. I mean, it's been done before. It's a little bit formulaic, obviously, honestly. And originally the concept just kind of started as just a way. It was kind of, we needed something to kind of focus our attention, and kind of like maybe cut down on, like limit the options that we had. Because when Gabrielle and I started talking about making music together, we had never met, we had never played together. There's just so many songs, there's so many songs out there, right? And so initially I was like, let's just like, let's put some sort of concept on it so we can start to like make some choices. And I didn't necessarily um believe that the concept was going to hang around and still be there at the end, but it did. And although, I mean, I firmly believe that, like, uh, the music is about the music, right? I mean, and each song should hopefully stand on its own as, hopefully a compelling, moving, or at least, intriguing musical statement.
Mhm.
There is something about the way all the music ties together, and all the songs tie together conceptually and intellectually and emotionally, that yeah, that it's part of what the record is.
Right, right. And I think like one of the things that you did, which I found quite fascinating. I mean, Stars Fell on Alabama and to John Coltrane's Alabama.
Mm.
And I mean, how did that concept come together? It's pretty brilliant the way it works together.
Well, once, yeah, when we had the concept that we were going to do songs about places in the United States, cities or states or regions, and we started picking songs, and there were a lot of songs that how do you unpick them? Well, there are a lot of obvious songs, people are always like, why didn't you do Autumn in New York? Well, we actually play Autumn in New York live sometimes. I mean, it was an interesting process to go through with Gabrielle, like, deciding which songs we were gonna do and which we weren't. And for her, I mean, I think the same is true for me, but to an even greater degree for her, it's all about like emotional connection. And like she might love a song, like deeply love a song, but feel like somehow she doesn't have, I mean, I feel like I'm speaking for her and I shouldn't be, but like, but feel like she might deeply love the song, but feel like she doesn't have the the proper emotional relationship to the song, whether it's through the lyrics of the song or the melody or the harmony or whatever, that to sing it. So there were a lot of songs that we kind of looked at, that yeah, that we decided weren't going to be right for this project. But Stars Fell on Alabama was a song we kind of settled on fairly early on. That would be a beautiful kind of classic romantic, you know, American songbook standard to do.
Right.
And it was really important to me, if we were doing songs that were about America, to try to represent, um, I mean, there's no way to represent the totality of the American experience, like, but at least to try to represent some sort of range of experience and some sort of diversity of experience. And there are a lot of the classic, standards that jazz musicians play, these American songbook tunes, these chestnuts. A lot of them, I mean, they talk about different things, but it's a very kind of, especially from our vantage point now, a very nostalgic, romanticized, kind of optimistic. Even if they're sad songs, it's a romantic idealism, that is part of the American experience, and that I think was especially celebrated during the time those songs were written. And I love those songs. Most jazz musicians love them. They're our bread and butter. But it was important for me that we didn't just represent that aspect of the American experience.
Right.
And so one of the things that obviously we're playing with, conceptually, is this juxtaposition, of kind of this American idealism and romanticism, versus the reality of American life and some of the great hardships of American life, and in particular, some of the great injustices, in American life for many Americans. So this was an idea I had early on. Once we decided we were going to do Stars Fell on Alabama, I did think of John Coltrane's Alabama, which is one of the great, I don't know if you could call it political statements, social justice statements in jazz. He wrote it as, in response to, the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, which was a horrific moment, but a huge, event in our nation's life, and it galvanized the civil rights movement in a lot of ways. Um, and so I had that idea of this juxtaposition, this classic American, antebellum. Stars Fell in Alabama is supposedly about like a meteor shower that I think happened in like 1840s or 1850s,
Oh, wow. Okay.
in Alabama. And it's a, again, very, very romanticized, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's kind of representing a certain aspect of the American South and that experience. And I wanted to juxtapose that, put that in conversation with, a very different, experience, of the American South.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean, just the heaviness of Coltrane's Alabama, against Stars Fell on Alabama is pretty.
Yeah, I mean, the heaviness of Coltrane's Alabama, just period. I mean, it's
Wow.
that's a song I've probably been listening to that. I mean, I don't remember the first time I heard it. My mom was a fairly big lover, as many people of her generation, as everyone loves John Coltrane, but there were a lot of not everyone, but there were a lot of Coltrane records in the house. He was one of the musicians that I heard very, very early on. Love Supreme is one of the first records I can ever remember being conscious of as an album. And Alabama is on live at Birdland. It's not a live track, but it is on that record. And it's something I've been listening to for a very long time. And I had played it a few times solo in churches, actually. But I had never played it. I don't think I'd ever played it in a quartet setting before. And it was somewhat daunting to just think about, oh, wait, we're gonna play Alabama, as a jazz quartet. Well, I mean, I was able to make this record with three of the greatest rhythm section players living today, Brian Blade and Joe Sanders and Aaron Parks, three of the greatest musicians living. And yeah, we our approach to Alabama was kind of like, we didn't talk about it. We ran through it once in rehearsal just to make sure that I had transcribed it correctly, I mean, there are a lot of chords, but the chords seemed right, and that we had a general sense of the song. And we played it. We did a couple gigs leading up to the recording. We might have played it at one of the gigs. And then in the studio, we did it. We did a take. We went back in and listened to it, and we were like, seems okay. Let's go with this, because otherwise it would just be this rabbit hole, right? It's just like, if you start thinking about, oh my God, we're doing John Coltrane's Alabama, and are we worthy? And we'll never be worthy, and we have to make this so much, our own. And it's just like, you can't win like that, right? So we listened, and we were like, this has substance, and it has hopefully integrity and some honesty, and it feels like us, and also captures some of the spirit of the song. So let's let it be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Not to make this about myself, but the show that I do is an evaluation of the albums from 1964 through 1994, 30 albums for every year. And of course, we talk about Coltrane, and we had a show on live in Birdland. And
oh, you did? Oh, okay.
yeah,
Wow.
as a guest, I had Ashley Kahn, who wrote about
Yeah.
Lewis Porter, who a friend of mine, also came on the program to discuss it. So it ties right in. And I mean, I have a certain trust in your music that I know when you put something out, it's going to be, a strong effort. But when I see,
I'm glad you have that trust, because I sure don't. Oh I mean, my musical past is just littered with bad choice.
oh,
So, in hindsight, but whatever, at the time I believed in them. So
I'd like to talk about that a little bit. But the thing is, when I see a Coltrane song like in Alabama or something from Love Supreme, it's so personal to so many people, right?
yeah,
There's a certain like nervousness I almost get when I see that a Coltrane tune on a record, because I'm such a huge fan.
sure.
And the way you handled it, I think it still captured that vibe and had your own take on it. And I just want to commend you for it, because
Thank you so much. That means so
yeah,
much. Thank
it's
you.
really, really great. And then I have to ask about this. So I'm in New Jersey, about 10 minutes from where Springsteen grew up.
Hmm. Yeah.
Springsteen's like,
Yeah.
he walks on water where we
Right.
are.
Right.
So even though it's not a song about New Jersey, Streets of Philadelphia, that the way you handled that, can you discuss how that arrangement came about?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I think I would ever cover a Bruce Springsteen song. I mean, I've always had the utmost love and respect for Bruce Springsteen as a musician, and as a um uh I mean, he's almost a statesman, right? I mean, but like as a cultural force and icon, and what he's represented through his music, and the way he's used his position to advocate for the things he's advocated for, and he just I've always had the utmost respect and awe for him. I honestly did not grow up like a huge, I didn't grow up in New Jersey, right?
Right.
I've always like really liked and has respected his music, but I wouldn't say that he's been one of my biggest influences from outside of jazz, definitely not to the level of say like, the Beatles. Like I liked a lot of classic rock, like the Beatles and the Stones and Led Zeppelin. And then like in terms of music of my time, it was like the Police and, hip hop and Prince and Michael Jackson, Earth, Wind and Fire. Okay. But the other thing is like Bruce Springsteen's music, like it's not the first um, uh, in terms of the ways the songs are constructed melodically and harmonically, it's maybe not the most obvious fodder and fuel for jazz interpretation. And um, so I don't know how this actually came about. I think that when Gabrielle and I were talking about songs, and we're just like, I think I like threw it off, like it was almost an aside, like, oh well, there's Philadelphia, we could do Streets of Philadelphia, like a joke almost. Not that it's not a great song. I mean, it's an iconic song, right? I mean, I remember when that song came out, and I remember when that movie came out and what a big deal that was. But it was kind of like, oh, we're never going to do a Bruce Springsteen song. And she was somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where, and she was I think she was in her car somewhere, like listening to music, and she listened to the song and she like texted me. She was like, I'm in my car and I'm listening to Streets of Philadelphia and I'm crying and we should do the song. So there's like the emotional connection again, right? Like she felt something with the song. And so I was like, okay. And then I kind of went to work trying to find a way in which we might be able to, I don't want to say bring it into our world, not at all, but just find some sort of meeting place between the world of, improvised acoustic jazz and the world of Bruce Springsteen. And in particular, like that Bruce Springsteen track is not even like, as far as I know, it's not really I mean, it's a lot of his music is like him with the E Street Band, right? It's like rock, right? Bass and drums and guitar and that is like, I think it's maybe a drum machine and it's like keyboards and so it's kind of like it's not even, it's even kind of a satellite in terms of his own over, right? So it's a pretty big gulf. But I actually feel like it's just a great song. And it is also, I think it's a prime example of a song that we could have never done without a vocalist. Yeah. Like I wouldn't ever dream of playing this song without Gabrielle. I wouldn't, there may be some others that we could, but not this one. And yeah, I think it's actually one of the tracks that I feel is one of the more successful on the record, to be honest.
Yeah, it's so all the arrangements. So you came up with the arrangement concepts, or was it like a collaborative effort?
Yeah, I mean, I did all the arrangements. I mean, you people won't see my air quotes now, but yeah, like arrangements in terms of like bass lines, and there's some reharmonizations and yeah, the harmonies. If the melodies change, the bass lines, maybe a loose idea of like tempo and groove. So yes, yeah, the arrangements were all mine, and then I brought them into the band. I mean, the one thing as an arranger, never in my life have I ever, or a composer, have I ever written a drum part, and especially if you've got Brian Blade, you just don't
Right.
write drum parts,
He's got it down.
because he's gonna like any, I mean, it's kind of a joke because like I work out, I work usually start arranging on the keyboard or piano or whatever, the Wurlitzer. I got a little Wurlitzer back here, and then at a certain point I'll switch to Sibelius and put in Sibelius now, and then sometimes I'll just like lay down like just you know, some sort of beat, but it's like the worst drum sounds and the worst,
I know
you
what
know,
you're talking
like it's like, you know, it's worse than like the stock beats on like the old Casio tones. I don't think anyone's
about.
gonna know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. But it's just like they're so soulless and like mechanistic and just like cheesy, you know, and sometimes I do it just so people can hear where one is, you know, or just like, but it's like if you heard like the beat that I put down for like that arrangement and then hear like what Brian and Joe do, it's just like they're completely different universes. So yes, I make the arrangements, but the arrangements mean nothing. They're not, it's not music until it's played with the other musicians, and the other musicians are the ones who make sense of it and bring it to life and put put soul in it and make it music. So yeah, I mean they're it's a it's jazz. It's a collaborative effort all the way through.
Right, right. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I think in doing this, so another thing, I teach a course on history of American music and wrote a book on it. And I was trying to think of another album where you have Charles Ives, Woody Guthrie, Springsteen, Coltrane. I mean, really the geniuses of American music, and the Great American Songbook, of course, pretty well represented in this 60-minute, you know, like an hour long
When you put
album.
it that way, that's like a lot of pressure. I didn't even think of. I mean, yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, I mean, Charles Ives is one of the great American composers, right? And you
Yeah.
know, arguably the one of the greatest 20th century. I mean, you know, he captured the spirit of our country, yeah, especially New England, right? Especially a certain kind of
Yeah.
like town life in at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to me, it was like, you know, there's so much of this record that's kind of like, I mean, it is conceptual. It's the most conceptual record I've ever done. And I'm a musician who has always um had a kind of healthy skepticism or mistrust of concept, and especially if it's my own, you know, because I want the concept of the music ultimately to be the music itself, right? You
Sure.
know, but this is very conceptual, and some of the things, you know, like the broad concept places in America, but also some of these mashups. It's just like, oh, well, here's a song about Chicago, and here's another song about Chicago, and let me put them together. Or here's, you know, this song called New England from this Betty Carter record, a song that I had never heard that Gabrielle, I don't want to say she discovered, but she was like, let's do the song. I was like, I don't know what that song is. Oh, it's, you know, and then I was like, oh, well, like, let me think of something else about New England. Charles Ives wrote three places in New England. Let me go like steal some stuff from there, you know, and put it in an intro. It's just like so random, right? Like, and so
Right.
conceptual in like a non-organic way. But the thing that I feel like I've learned, I mean, maybe this is justification after the fact, but I like my the 20 something Josh would be like, no way. Like it has to, everything has to come, or even 30 something, like everything has to come from this like mysterious, like unknowable, you know, deeply soulful wellspring of inspiration. So so anything that's like a concept, that's like an idea, like that's kind of anathema, because that's going to be, that's something that's not coming from a true and real place. Okay.
Mhm.
And I mean, there's a part of me that still kind of believes that. Um, but one thing I have learned is that sometimes some starting with some sort of uh, analytical structure or concept, no matter how formulaic or seemingly uninspired or impersonal, you know,
Mhm.
sometimes you can start with something like that, and then your own personality and your own creativity and your own organic soulful flow start to take over, and something very beautiful can come out of that. So I find myself being more okay with that, as I
Mhm.
age. Maybe it's because I just have fewer ideas spontaneously on my own. It's a way of dealing with writer's block. Well, I can't figure out what to do, what to write. So let me start with like a stupid concept and then like, see what happens.
Cool. So, on your tour, are you mostly playing songs from the record, or?
Yeah, so we've done two big tours with this project. We did one in the States for about 3 weeks in September, right when the record came out into October, and that was with the band on the record with Aaron Parks and Joe Sanders and Brian Blade. And then Gabrielle and I went to Europe for a month shortly after that with uh, Paul Cornish is the pianist, and Philip Norris is the bassist. Nazir Ebo is the drummer. So this is kind of going to be our main touring band throughout for this year and beyond. And yes, so we're playing definitely the music from the record. I think we played pretty much all the songs on the record. We have other songs that are in the repertoire, some that fit the concept, most of them do still. Like the Eagles Hotel California, we have a version of that we never
Oh,
actually
wow.
recorded, but we've kind of developed since then. So we play that a lot. And when we went to Europe, Gabrielle and I decided that we couldn't just go to Europe playing just American songs,
Okay.
and we did that, but what we tried to do every night is wherever we were, play some song that might have some relationship to the place that we were. So we kind of started to expand the repertoire. So now we've got songs from other places as well. So it's a work in progress, and I think we're going to be touring uh, a lot this year, and I'm sure at a certain point we're going to start to chafe under the restrictions of the concept. I mean, the concept is fun.
Right.
It's fun to like roll into a place and like play a song about the place. We can't do that everywhere. Not sure we can do that in Red Bank, but
The basie too.
we'll play streets of Philadelphia,
That's just like anything Springsteen will do it. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, it's a band now, and it's evolving, and so I think in the coming weeks and the coming months, uh, yeah, things will gradually expand the repertoire.
Nice. Cool. All right. So, if I could, you mentioned the 20-year-old Josh.
20,
Um, I mean, you
20 something, 20-year-old, I was still in college.
right, right. I mean, you had like such an interesting path coming into jazz. I think almost unique in that it seemed like you got a lot of it. I mean, obviously, your father was a phenomenal jazz musician, but you got a lot of attention pretty early on. Um, yeah. I mean, how did it was you won the monk competition, right? That was was that a big deal?
Yes, yes, and that was a big deal. I mean, it was a big deal in well, it wasn't the summer, but in a year and a half year of big deals. I moved to New York. I graduated in June of '91, and I moved to New York right after that. It was a last minute decision, basically. I had been applied and been accepted to law school, decided to take a year deferment, wasn't sure where I was going to go. Turns out there was a house in Brooklyn with a bunch of musicians that I knew that I had met from when I was from the Boston area.
Sure.
Um, and they were like, "Come down, sleep in the living room. We need help with the rent." It was a
I
nice
love
living room,
that.
and it was a nice house. It was in Park Slope. I think it was on 11th Street or something like that. And it was like classic brownstone. Um, and so I was like, okay, got nothing better to do. So I moved into that house, and I was just around music for the first time in my life all the time. Cats were practicing all the time, and there were jam sessions there all the time. And Brooklyn still is, but especially then was a real nexus for the locus for the young jazz community. And there were so many musicians from my generation who were living in the area, and there were always jam sessions going on. And I was going out to clubs and listening to music all the time, starting to work around town. my father started hiring me. Dewey Redman started hiring me to play in his band. I played at the Vanguard with him that summer, you know. And I think I did my first tour in maybe September of that year with Jeff Keezer. So things were just starting to happen. I was able to make my rent, you know,
Right.
playing. Yeah, I mean, you know, make my rent and a couple slices of pizza a night. That's all you need, right? So that's what you
Right.
do in New York. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was like, wow, I'm doing this and I'm playing greatest music in the world with some of the greatest musicians in the world, and I'm able to support myself and make a living. And you know, I started getting calls from you know, older musicians like Charlie Hayden and Paul Motion and Jack DeJohnette, and yeah, I mean, started to do tours with them, and yeah, I entered the Monk competition last minute, kind of on a whim, and yeah, I ended up making the semifinals and then making the finals, and yeah, I don't know what happened, but yeah, it was a big deal.
Right. I mean, it's but like so I think about, the typical parents, right? So if you went to Harvard and then
Uh-huh.
you get into Yale Law School, right? And most parents would go, that seems like a pretty good path. But you
Yeah,
grew
I
up.
mean, sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
No, no, but you're fine. But you grew up with two artists, right? I think your mother a dancer.
yeah, I grew up with my mother, not with my father.
Oh, okay. Fair.
You know, my mother and father were never married, in fact. And you know, by the time I was born, my father, they met in San Francisco, but my father moved to New York, I think, in sometime in 68, and I was born in 69. And so he was already living in New York then. So I was raised solely by my mom and
Hmm.
really didn't know my father well. I knew his music well, but didn't know him well. I mean, I saw him maybe growing up 10 times, you know, like
Right.
whenever he come to town and play. Um, but yes, I mean, I kind of have a sense of where you're going with the question. Um, the irony of it is, like, my mom was like, yes, play music. And my father was like, you're crazy, boy. I get you out back. You know, like, you know, and I mean, but it makes sense, right? Because he was living the life and had lived the life. And, you know, he is you know, I mean, I'm biased, of course, but I think he's one of the great tenor saxophonists in jazz. And, you know, I mean, he was, you know, he has the utmost respect and admiration and um uh uh yeah of his peers, and I mean, you know, people, you know, he was a musician that the music community held in such high regard and high esteem, and yet he struggled to make ends meet
Hmm.
always, you know. I mean, I remember the first time that I went to go see him in New York, and he lived in the same apartment um in Brooklyn. It was, I think, near the Church Avenue. I can't remember the name of the neighborhood. The Church Avenue stop in Brooklyn. He lived in that same apartment his entire life in New York. Saw the whole neighborhood change. But I remember going there, and he was, you know, going up to it was like a 5 floor walk up or whatever, going up to the apartment. And he was like, hey, hang on, I'll be back, you know. And he was gone for like an hour and a half. And he came back and he had his saxophone with him. And I was like, oh, where'd you go? He was like, oh, I went to the pawn shop. I had to go get my saxophone out of the pawn shop. So like
Yeah.
he would like go on the road and, like, you know, make a little bread and then get off the road, and, you know, at a certain point have to like put his horn in the pawn shop to buy some bread, literally to buy some bread, right? You
Right.
know,
Right.
and this was a regular thing for him, you know. So I'm going off on a tangent, but
No.
like he had an album called The Struggle Continues, and
Mhm.
the struggle was real for him. So I think, like, you know, and the thing that he, like, his mantra or his motto or whatever, like the thing that he stood firm on was like, I only play the music that I want to play with the musicians I want to play it with. So he would never do something that he didn't believe in 100% musically. And I think he felt, and I think he's right, that he probably paid an economic price for that, you
Mm.
know? And so I think when he found out that I was, making a choice to like pursue music, the logical reaction was like, no, like this life is too hard. You don't want to do this. Like like go for the stability, right? But I think at the same time, I don't want to speak for him, but I think that he was probably, I mean, I made the choice that he made in a way. He could have chosen other things. He was highly educated. He was a teacher, and he chose to leave Texas and move to San Francisco and drove a cab in San Francisco for years, like playing on the San Francisco scene, you know? So yeah, but my mom was like, screw law school, go for it. Yeah.
So is there like so I've asked a couple of people, I've had like Grant Green Jr. on here and Eric Mingus Jr., George Coleman Jr. So being the son of a known jazz musician, does that change for you? Is it open doors or does it make things a little more difficult? How do you handle that? Or how did you handle that?
I can't say, it's like it's like, this isn't the first time I've been asked this question. It's hard to answer. Like, did it make it more difficult? It's like, I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, obviously it opened doors, I mean, Charlie Hayden called me to play with him, like, after I'd been in New York for a few months. I don't think that would have happened if I wasn't, one of his best friend's sons. Okay. Like, for my father hired me to play in his band, he just didn't just let me play in his band. He even like paid me something. Like, that's nepotism, right? Like,
Oh,
so
no,
no. I mean, I'm being slightly facetious, but
yeah.
of course it opened doors, and of course having my father's name. I mean, yes, I mean that it's unquestionable advantage. I mean, my life has been full of advantages, also a lot of disadvantage. I grew up very, materially. My mom was on welfare the entire time she was raising me. We didn't have anything like from a financial or material standpoint. But yes, I mean the opportunities, because I was my father's son, for sure. Probably huge benefits of the doubt. It's like, yeah, he sounds like shit, but like, maybe someday he's gonna be looking at his dad, I don't know. But I think that a lot of people assume that, oh, well, it must have been this incredible pressure, like to live up to your father's, like like the standards that he set or the legacy. And I mean, yes, if I think about it that way, but it's strange. Like I never really did. I mean, of course, I knew who my father was and idolized him and loved his music. And um uh, uh of course I mean, he's one of the standards, musical standards that I aspired to, but I never kind of felt like, oh, uh, I'm continuing some sort of legacy, or that I never even thought, oh, I'm doing it because my father is doing it. I know that sounds weird, but it was never like, it was just like, oh, my father played the saxophone. Oh, I play the saxophone too. I like to play the saxophone too. Maybe I'll do that, like it's just like, oh, it's a coincidence. Of course
Sure,
it's
sure.
of course it's not a coincidence, but like somehow like I tricked myself, maybe like consciously I still don't. It's like it's almost like, oh, Dewey Redman's your father. That must be a lot to live up to. But like for me, it's no even sitting here now, it's no difference the fact that Dewey Redman is a great saxophonist that whose music I admire and adore and aspire to. It's no different that he is than that Sonny Rollins is, or that John Coltrane is, or that Stan Getz is, or Dexter Gordon, or Joe Henderson, or Ben Webster, or Lester, or all my other idols. It's not like they're not my fathers. They're as much my father as my father is in a way, like, you know. So it's like, yeah, it's hard to be a saxophonist. It's hard to be a jazz musician, you know, with all those greats, you know, like it's a lot on your shoulders, but it's all of our shoulders, right? I mean, that's the nature of great
Yeah.
art, great achievement.
Oh, I understand. I mean, yeah. I mean, every time I look at this, I see Ray Brown, I see
Yeah,
Charles, you know,
yeah, yeah.
and
So you know, you got you know, it's not like yeah, it's not like some special cross I had to bear or some special burden, you know. So I would say, yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, it's just been an advantage. Although I think there's something, okay, like when I started playing with my father, you know, I was young. I mean, I guess I could kind of get around the horn, kind of. I had a certain flow, like I could get like ideas came quickly. I could kind of like, you know, maybe tell an somewhat interesting story, engaging story as an improviser. I don't know. It's hard to say. Um, but like having to play after my father every night, it was just like after he played, like just the depth and the weight and the power of that sound and the love and the beauty, that the angst, the anguish, the poignancy, the strength, the vulnerability, everything that was in that his sound, and in particular in the blues quality of expression that he had
Mhm.
in that sound. It was almost like it, it just like like whatever I played just was um it was like you know those like those really the cheap sprinkles that you put on ice cream, you know, like it was just like it meant nothing, like because like it was just the weight of that sound and that quality of blues expression, and
Mhm.
that is something that I feel um is has always been at the heart and soul of jazz for me, and maybe all great music, or all great much, much great music. And it's always been something that I felt um I didn't have the access to that I wished I would have, you
Mhm.
know.
Understand.
And it's been a source uh of so much inspiration and revelation, but it's also been a mystery for me. Like, how can I get closer to that, whatever that is? And I think over time, I have little by little gotten closer to that. But I think there was something about, you know, because I feel like that's one of the things that like made my father as great as he was. And it's one of the things that I've always felt like I maybe lacked what not lacked it completely, but lacked, like didn't have enough of it. And so that maybe that juxtaposition is like, oh, that's my father and he's got that, and I don't have that. And how do I get closer to that? And you know, maybe part of it was getting closer to him, and I don't know, I'm still figuring it out. I do feel like I have it more now than I did, but it's not, it's yeah.
Right. I got no, we're, I mean, I think we're always searching, right? As
Yeah,
jazz musicians specifically too.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So, I mean, I don't want to keep you too long, but you know, like it seems like it was a pretty organic shift for you, and then you're like, and then don't think enough is made out of like the early '90s, were like a really pretty amazing time for jazz, and you were kind of like right in that scene.
Uh-huh.
Um, could you just talk about that time period? Because I think you have all these great musicians coming up, as always seems to happen, but also a lot of the legends are still very much around, and
Yeah.
you were kind of intertwined with both.
Yeah, yeah, it was an incredible time, because there was, I mean, especially in New York, there were so many clubs, so many places to play, so many places to go out and hear music. Um, there were I mean, obviously there was a generation of jazz musicians that was kind of very committed to um kind of learning and playing the music in a kind of mode of expression that was very much rooted in the 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 standards and the values, I guess, of kind of like the acoustic jazz mainstream, whatever that means, So like, yeah, I mean, there was and then there were great, so many of the giants of that um so many of the great practitioners of that art were still around. I mean, I consider myself like I just think about drummers. Like I had a chance to play with Elvin Jones and Jack DeJohnette and Billy Higgins and Roy Haynes and Ben Riley and Tootie Heath and Paul Motion. I mean, I had a chance to play with so many of the great drummers from, I mean, everyone's got their own golden era, right? But for us, like the golden era of jazz was like the 60s, right? I mean, but like that kind of there was kind of a transgenerational bond. I mean, it's still there, but maybe it's not there as much. The thing is, like those musicians were there, and they were playing, and they were you could go out and hear them, and then there were also opportunities to go and actually play with them, whether they hired you for their group or whether you were doing a record date together. There was so much happening. There was a lot of work. There was a lot of recording work. There was a lot of gig work. There were a lot of tours. And so that was special. I mean, it was incredible for me to be, a part of the generation, Roy Hargrove and Christian McBride and Brad Meldau and Brian Blade and Greg Hutchinson. And, I mean, all of these incredible musicians, they're now icons of the music, right? But like Nicholas Payton, I mean, I feel like I learned everything that I know from getting to Kurt Rosenwinkel, Mark Turner. I mean, I can keep, there's so many, but like I was lucky. These were the musicians that this was my generation, and they were my teachers. They were also my friends. So, yeah.
That's good company to have for sure. Yeah. And then it's like, and then, I mean, even with all those names, you like kind of your first record and your subsequent records. I mean, they were popular right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, so how did you get like hooked up with Warner Brothers, and were you like surprised by like the level of success you got so early on?
Yeah, I'm still surprised by it. I don't know what happened. Some deal, some sordid deal was made in some back room somewhere.
They're really good records, man.
Yeah, well, with Warner Brothers, I mean, that happened, that came out of the competition, because the irony was that, I mean, maybe it's a bit of a little kind of historical loop was closed. I had a demo deal from Blue Note sitting on my dresser drawer. Like Bruce Lundvall was going to sign me to a demo deal, and I just didn't get around to signing it. And then I went to the competition, and after the competition, of course, there was a lot of interest from a lot of labels. And I just struck up, Matt Pearson, who was young. He had been at Blue Note before, but had gone on to kind of do A&R at Warner Brothers. We just we had a good relationship, and it just seemed like an interesting place for me to be. And Warner didn't really have a lot going on with jazz, at least not acoustic jazz at the time, and younger jazz musicians. So it was a risk, but it seemed like, oh, this could be, not big fish in a small pond, but like maybe, yeah, just like there weren't as many fish there. So it seemed
Okay.
like, oh, and I like the thing is, I was just like, I still thought I was going to go to law school, right? So I was just like, yeah, this is all why. I mean, it didn't even feel like a gamble. It didn't even feel like rolling
Huh.
the dice. It's just like, yeah, this is cool. Like, let's
All right.
let's there was a certain kind of like nonchalance. Maybe some of that is youth, a certain ignorance, maybe even a certain hubris. I mean, I'm not, as you can probably tell, I'm not like the most overly confident person. But but like there was like I've always been super self-deprecating, but there was a kind of sense of like, I don't know, yeah, just kind of like it does, like this is all fun, right? It's so much fun. Like
Yeah.
that was like music has always been fun for me. Like that's always like it was never the thing that was serious. Like, it was never the thing that I was serious about. Don't get me wrong, I'm very serious about it now. But for me, music was always an escape from that stuff. So and at that time it was just like I didn't plan to do this. I didn't really work hard for this. I mean, I love the music and I've listened deeply to the music, but like this is just so much fun. So let's have some fun. Yeah. Let's make a record. Make records.
It's crazy. All right, cool, man. So what did I miss? Anything else you want people to know? Any-
Um, I don't know. I mean, I just feel super lucky, blessed, fortunate, just grateful to be able to do this and to have been able to do this for so long, to do it with some of the best who have ever done it, and I'm still having fun.
so no law school in the future?
Oh God. I mean, now it's a little more serious because I realize that I literally suck at everything else. So like there's no way I can't imagine doing anything else with my life. So it's time to get scared, I think. Yeah,
So it's still fun. Still having fun with it.
for sure.
Cool, man. Josh, it was nice meeting you. Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. Thanks for the time, Jay. I
Thank
appreciate
you. Appreciate you. And hopefully I'll see you on the show at the show.
I hope so. Yeah. Take
All
care
right,
now.
take care.
All right, cats, there you have it. There's my interview with Josh Redman. And again, be sure to check out his record, Where Are We? Blue Notes Records, and see him at the Count Basie Center for the Arts, the Vogel Theater, on February 9th in Red Bank, New Jersey. Now, it's been a while since I've had a regular season episode, as you know. Please be sure to tune in February 1st. We start our new season, The Music of 1966. All right, together let's keep this wonderful music alive. Speak to you soon. Have a wonderful day. Peace.